Hello and welcome back to the studio. You'll have to forgive me, I have a little bit of like a head cold, and so if my voice sounds a little bit weird or I squeak once in a while, that's why. We're just kind of trying to get back into it, but I still wanted to get a video out to you guys this week. And I thought it would be a good time to just share with you kind of some behind the scenes of my work process and what I'm working on right now. We have a little tonal piece that we'll be playing around with today, and I'll have, some little tips along the way when we get into that work portion. But I also wanted to share with you a little bit about what's changing and shifting for this channel, for my business, and kind of what's going on. So to start, I'm shifting away a little bit in the video format. So instead of step-by-step tutorials, which has been my main focus for like 8 years, time to a little bit more exploring concepts, exploring, different aspects of color theory, exploring different ways to work with certain mediums, testing and trying different things, looking at watercolor tips, looking at drawing tips and techniques, the exercises that I find that I really like. We're diving more into that because I can still continue to work on these pieces and show them to you and show you the process. And one of the reasons I want to have like more finished pieces is because I'm hoping to do some art shows this year. And I have not had the energy to even consider doing a market or an art show or a craft show probably since before the twins were born. I just haven't had the desire. It hasn't even crossed my mind. So my sister does a lot of crocheting and she has a crochet business. And it's something that I actually do quite a bit of as well. So I'm usually, if you see me, sitting in a meeting or in church, I'm probably knitting something. So she wanted to do one, and I was kind of starting to be curious about whether or not people would be interested in my patterns. And so we thought, well, let's do one together. It'll be a lot of fun. And in doing the research for it and like thinking about it and getting ready for it, I have just been like, I really want to do one with my art. As absolutely terrifying as that would be, and as scary as it is to think about packing up all my stuff and spending the money on prints and like trying to do things and then going and maybe selling nothing, I still think I'm gonna try it. I don't know, I could go on and on about how I'm nervous and like what I'm nervous about. If you have any experience or any tips, I'd love to hear those in the comment section down below. I'd love to glean from your experience and just learn a little bit more about what to do and what not to do. But rather than continuing to talk, because I can already feel I've got a whole nother story cooking up here for you, I'm going to turn the camera around and we're going to get started. Random tip I just thought about. I love to use a kneaded eraser, but when I'm working with very gentle gradation here, where I want to pick it up a little bit so that it's more solid inside of here and it gets a little bit lighter here, working with a dirty kneaded eraser, you'll pick up less. And it's just so much easier to get that more subtle gradient. Yeah, this is a little bit too dark. So this actually might be a good example. It's a little too dark, but I don't want to pick up a ton. So I can just kind of tap along it. And just a couple of taps. I usually get a spot that I picked up a little bit too much. I can just kind of lightly fill that back in. But it helps with, just picking up a little bit less if you're going for that subtlety, that subtle difference between two different values. Well, I was going to ask if a specific tip video on, like different shading techniques would be helpful, and especially like how to get a smooth blend. But I actually already have one specifically for like smooth blends without using extra tools, other than like your pencil and your eraser. Not that I'm against, certainly, using other tools to kind of polish things off, like a tortillon or a blending stump or a paintbrush. I certainly do love and use those myself. But I actually think it's helpful to know how to do without those tools, just in case you don't happen to have one on hand. And it just kind of encourages more skill development. So if you've been interested in that video, I'll have that linked down below as well. And if you want more shading help, I do have a full course. And there is a full lesson dedicated just to tonal shading like this. Welcome back. It is a new day working on the same piece, but I have my paintbrush out because I'm going to start working on some of the blending. I thought I'd talk a little bit about blending with a paintbrush because, like I said, I do have a video that talks about blending, but I don't go into a lot of detail about the paintbrush. If you do want to know a lot more about this and where like I just dive into the whole process and I talk through it, I do have that lesson in the full shading course, the pencil shading course, but I thought we'd talk a little bit about it anyway. All right, the first thing I'll say is that the easiest thing that you can do is go way overboard with blending with your paintbrush or really any blending tool. It's very easy to go from kind of modeled and crafted to, instead of smooth, to muddy. And so I generally prefer to save the paintbrush for larger areas or areas still like larger. I might do it in here a little bit, but it will be very easy to go too far and just become cloudy and muddy. So don't depend too much on the paintbrush, on using your paintbrush or your tortillon or a blending stump, because it's not a magic tool. I've talked to people before and they're like, well, what blending tool do you use? And it's like, well, again, it's just a tool. It's great to use and it can be really helpful, but in the end, if your skill isn't ready, then it's not really going to help you that much. And it might even smudge everything beyond what your skill level can save. So I do like to use it for bigger areas like this, where I need it to be nice and smooth all the way around. And it just kind of makes that process easier, where I don't have to worry as much about pencil lines and getting everything perfectly crisp. Another thing I do is I will rub off excess on my tissue. So like I can kind of get in here, but it doesn't necessarily add anything to it. I actually generally prefer the look of carefully blended pencil strokes to like perfectly blended, especially if you're risking going too far. right, I was trying to find a good example of how things can get muddy. And I found one that's a little bit more obvious. So I was blending in with this nice fluffy flathead some of this cast shadow that we have here, but you can see that it's kind of run into this leaf. First, there was like a halo effect where there was just this glow around the leaf, and so I decided to just go over it and embrace it to get rid of that halo effect because I don't want to highlight the leaf. But now I need to go back in and deepen everything. A little more like that. All right, that's a little bit better. I'm gonna keep my mic on the water bottle, so we'll see how that goes. Well, done with this piece for now. Still planning, I'm thinking I'm probably gonna add a background. I don't know, it kind of depends. I might see how some of the other pieces in this series come together and see just if that would be helpful or not. I think visually it would be nice. I think it would be a lot of work to do. And that's one of the reasons I don't want to do it right now. So I don't have a lot of time left before my work time is over. And so I'm either going to dive, I really kind of want to, I feel kind of like I want to dive into another oil pastel piece, or I could start editing. So we'll see. I'm gonna grab a reference image real quick and see if I even get started or if I start shading this one, because I'm excited to have a mix of white paper and tonal paper and just kind of play around with different effects while I continue to pursue this series. And at least the way that I approach series, many artists are different. I kind of like have a general idea. I don't go so far as to have like a thesis. Some artists believe that, you know, like you have to have like a mission statement, a thesis for all of your series where every piece comes out of that. I'm not that rigid. I think it's kind of nice to explore an idea, and that's more of what I'm doing. I have like this idea and just this dance and contrast between two different elements that I'm really excited to explore. And I just want to see how many different ways I can kind of put that together. And sometimes that means I end up with a lot of pieces. Like I just had like a absolute obsession with florals and really like the botanical study and a lot of movement in it. And that lasted for like 10 years. So some things I think are, you know, like a set study where you're looking at this and you're exploring this idea. And some things are just, you know, just have kind of a theme because that's who you are. And art is such a reflection of kind of what we think about and who we are. So we'll see how this continues. I'm excited to keep going. Hopefully you are as well. And it's not like super boring. For references, you want to make sure that they're in the public domain, meaning that either you took them yourself so you have the rights to use it, or if it's in the public domain, anybody can use it. So my two favorite sites right now to use are artistreferencephotos.com. There are a ton of ads on it though, which I get, everybody's got to make some money. I haven't seen anything like explicit or anything like that, but I did have a friend message me and say that they did. So right now I have like garden supplies because that's what I'm generally obsessed with and what I'm shopping for. And that's all I've really seen is things that I already am shopping for, and so it's like in the feed. Anyway, I also like to use Unsplash, and that is, there are a lot that on there that are not available, so you do have to make sure that it's actually free. But that is a great resource too. Well, never mind. My work time is over for now. So I'm just going to close out this video. I hope that you found it interesting and helpful. If you'd like to see more of these, just where we're just kind of chatting about what I'm working on, kind of what I'm thinking, a little bit of behind the scenes, let me know in the comment section down below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe on your way there. I hope that you're having a wonderful day. And until next time, happy drawing.